by. It's been a long night. It'll be a long day for you and for many other people involved there. In fact, one tends to wonder how the pilots are able to keep it up. Some of them have gone out on one mission, come back to refuel, reload with ammunition, go off on a second mission. We will continue our coverage of the Operation Desert Storm in a moment.
The biggest thing I saw was one of the most fantastic fireworks demonstrations I've seen since 4th of July party years and years and years ago. This was tremendous. Baghdad was lit up like a Christmas tree.
This is a special edition of NBC News at Sunrise. America at War. Here are Garrick Utley and Mary Alice Williams.
Good morning and welcome to NBC News at Sunrise. We've been covering the events in the Persian Gulf, the ongoing conflict, confrontation, airstrikes there to bring you up to date on a number of the developments. The airstrikes are continuing. They are daytime strikes following the first nighttime raids overnight. We have not received any new official briefing either from American military sources in the Persian Gulf and Saudi Arabia at the headquarters there or from the Pentagon. We may be getting that come the morning here in the United States. As of now, the word is that no American planes have been lost in the raid. The British are saying the same thing about their planes. Some French Air Force planes have joined in strikes against positions in Kuwait. 4 of their planes were reported by the Defense Ministry in France to have been hit by anti-aircraft fire from Iraqi positions, but those planes apparently returned safely to their base. We have been hearing of new attacks against positions in and around Baghdad itself. Other developments in the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev has supported the war effort, saying Saddam Hussein, in effect, brought all of this on himself. Other nations, the NATO allies in Western Europe, have also endorsed the decision to go to war. The only brief incident on the terrorist front, and we cannot even call it terrorism per se, not a serious attack. It was an isolated incident in East Jerusalem where the American consulate building there had 3 shots fired against it by an unknown assailant who escaped. No one was hurt in that. No damage was caused, but of course the alert for terrorism is very high in the Middle East, in Europe, and of course in many parts of this country. That is basically where we stand right now. The daylight raids are continuing in the Persian Gulf. Let's go over now to Mary Alice Williams. Mary Alice.
Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein apparently survived the night of rain on Baghdad, the rain of that heavy weaponry, to claim that Iraq has shot down 14 Allied aircraft, in spite of the fact that earlier Defense Secretary Dick Cheney had said, and Garrick has just reiterated, that all the planes got back home safely. Saddam saying our brave Eagles, that's what they call their pilots and air defensemen, have so far shot down 14 enemy planes of various kinds. Saddam even asserted that among the planes hit were 3 shot down by the Presidential Guard themselves in Baghdad. Arthur Kent has been standing by through this night with us in Saudi Arabia. Arthur, have you heard any of that? Does that surprise you, or is that the kind of bravado you might have expected?
Yes, certainly. It's a sort of a pattern we've heard over the past 5 months from Saddam Hussein. Now, if his anti-aircraft units have indeed taken or inflicted losses on the U.S., British, Saudi, and Kuwaiti air forces involved in these raids, you would certainly never know it by the level of activity here. Constant takeoffs here now by American F-15 fighters, and just a moment ago another pair of British Tornado ground attack planes loaded to the hilt, flying off from this airport, rising on maximum thrust to lift that heavy armament up off the tarmac and flying north to join the battle in Kuwait and Iraq. There's no way to really, at this point, try to measure the quality of information we're getting from either side. Certainly the RAF and U.S. sources in Washington have been very firm that they have not taken losses. The French were very quick to admit that 4 of their 10 planes took some hits but managed to get back to base. Saddam's claim that 14 planes have been shot down is entirely at variance with this. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Okay, thank you very much. Arthur Kent in Saudi Arabia, the commander-in-chief who issued the order for the first strike late last night, has been bedded down for the night. Jim Miklashevsky is now standing by at the White House. Jim, what is today going to bring?
Well, President Bush, as you said, is still bedded down. We can look over at the White House. We see a little stirring going on. A corner of the White House, the kitchen is lit up, but the rest of the residence is still dark this morning. The president on any normal day would be up about 6 o'clock and be into the Oval Office shortly after 7 o'clock. And surprisingly, the White House says that today they're going to try to act as if it is a normal day. Once the president issued that order, the final order to attack, and then gave his speech last night to nationwide television from the Oval Office, he pretty much packed it up, went back to the residence, had a guest, the Reverend Billy Graham, and some family members around, but then turned in. As far as the White House is concerned, once the president signed off, he put it all in the hands of the military. That's not to say he's going to be out of touch, but the president has no intention, according to officials here, of trying to micromanage the war. He has total confidence in the Pentagon and the military planners. In fact, they pretty much laid out the war plan for him. So I suspect what you'll see is the president monitoring the events as the day goes on, talking to world leaders, fine-tuning the diplomatic edge. But the president, for the most part, is going to watch and learn as we do.
All right, thank you, Jim. Jim Miklashevsky at the White House, and our special edition of Sunrise will continue after this.
The boss in the family will be glad to know the 91 Mazda 626LX comes standard with an AM/FM cassette stereo, power windows and locks, power remote mirrors. And right now you can save up to $820 on an LX value pack with air conditioning, moonroof, and an anti-theft alarm. Plus factory-to-dealer incentives that can save you hundreds more. You're welcome, the Mazda 626.
It just feels right.
A cup of that coffee, please.
You know, it's going to be a nice day for the parade.
You know, even the coffee tasted somehow better back then. I guess that's why those Maxwell House folks slow roast their 1892 coffee. Didn't even change the way they used to make it. Introducing Maxwell House 1892 coffee, made with old-fashioned pride, the way things used to be.
At BASF, we don't make the house, we make it warmer. We don't make the suit, we make it racier. We don't make the meal, we make it healthier. We don't make the music, we make it clearer. At BASF, we don't make a lot of the products you buy, we make a lot of the products you buy better. BASF, the spirit of innovation.
Well, you can look at those numbers right there and get an indication of what's happening on markets around the world. And now that war has broken out in the Persian Gulf, Randall Smith of the Wall Street Journal, who's a regular participant here, is with us this morning. They are going up, aren't they?
That's right. Markets turned around. People had expected stocks to go down as soon as war broke out. But there's been a whole turnaround overnight after the Pentagon briefing that indicated things were going pretty well. Oil prices reversed. They had gone up initially, and now they are down sharply. And as a result, if things don't change before the stock market opens, we can expect stocks to be up.
And what about the dollar? What can we anticipate there?
The dollar had been up because it all hinges on inflation and what people think the oil price will be. If oil prices are down, as they are now, about $6 a barrel in London, that'll mean lower U.S. interest rates, and that will reduce the dollar's appeal, so the dollar's down.
So there's optimism in financial circles, basically because Israel wasn't attacked, wasn't pulled into this war, and oil is still flowing.
Exactly. It's a very volatile situation, though, and the first sign of bad news, things could turn around completely.
Okay. Randy Smith, thank you very much. We'll see how the markets do. Let's go over to Joe Woody now, who's standing by with the morning weather here and also in the Persian Gulf. How does it look there?
Yes, Garrick. Well, as Arthur Kent mentioned, we do have an upper level of disturbance over the Persian Gulf area, and that's going to provide a band of cloudiness, passing clouds over the Persian Gulf area, which may hinder the surveillance of the damage done in Iraq by the planes. Here in the U.S., this is what it looks like. We'll have cold temperatures over the northern plains, 70s in Southern California, and along the East Coast we'll have cooler temperatures, but seasonable temperatures. There will be some rain in Texas and snow in western Texas on this Thursday. That's the national weather. Now here's what's happening in your neighborhood. Places like Denver going up to 41 degrees, Chicago 34, Miami 78 degrees for a high, L.A. at the beach going up to 76, and Seattle's high 51 degrees. Fairbanks, Alaska 0 degrees, and compare that to Honolulu, Hawaii 84. That's a quick look at the national weather. Garrick?
Joe Woody, thank you very much. And we'll have more on the continuing airstrikes, the continuing war, Operation Desert Storm, as we continue here at NBC News and Sunrise in just a moment.
It's tough getting out of bed to face all the chores ahead, till that aroma comes through when the Folger starts to brew. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Folgers is mountain-grown coffee, and the rich aroma of mountain-grown beans makes Folgers one coffee made with the morning in mind.
Now things are feeling right. You see the morning in a whole new light. There's hard work to be done, another day yet to be won. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
We bake pearls made of denture material in this blueberry pie to prove how powerfully Efferdent, America's leading denture cleanser, removes this tough stain, even in between. Efferdent, stronger than stains.
Ducks, geese, and swans are the barometers of our health. They need clean air and water just like we do. So when they start to disappear, we know we're all in danger. But Ducks Unlimited can bring them back by restoring their habitat. Join us. Protecting waterfowl protects us all.
Did you ever watch three little kids learning to count? One counts on the right hand, the other counts on the left, and the third goes straight for the toes. The thing is, all kids can learn, but they all learn in different ways, so try not to compare your kids to each other or to anyone else's kids. Just try to encourage them. Because the more you know about how your kids learn, the more you'll know how to help them.
A possible indication that Iraq's retaliatory capability has not been completely flattened. We're getting reports now that Iraqi forces have launched rocket attacks against an onshore oil facility in Saudi Arabia operated by Japan's biggest oil producer, Arabian Oil Company Limited. A spokesman for that company said there were no casualties, but all of the company's 50 employees at 3 facilities there, including 2 offshore oil fields, were being evacuated. Now, in Norfolk, Virginia, thousands of families of American sailors and soldiers are watching the news from the Gulf, of course, with great concern. And they're getting some help in dealing with their anxiety from military chaplains. Stan Bernard has more.
Norfolk is a military town which fully expected the launching of the war against Iraq. But when the word came, it was still a shock.
I can imagine what you mean.
They had gathered at the First Baptist Church for a concert of religious music. The event was interrupted for the developments out of the Middle East. Their tears turned to quiet reflection and prayers.
And Lord, keep them safe. Just put your guardian angels around them all, and we do, and Lord, pray for a swift end.
Even in this military community, virtually everyone was supportive of what is now called Operation Desert Storm. But they are not sounding especially hawkish.
I have mixed feelings, I really do. Very mixed feelings about it. I wish it were not necessary, but I suppose it is.
I'm upset, you know, that it's
that it's happened, but if that's what, our president feels that, is necessary, then I support, what we've done.
This is a community that had girded for the launching of the war against Iraq. But with that done, now they are holding their breath, worried about their loved ones and their neighbors. The yellow ribbons are not being taken off the church doors. Stan Bernard, NBC News, Norfolk.
And it's not just in the military communities, but communities across this nation where people very much support the troops now deployed in the Persian Gulf. The news continues. You're watching a special edition of NBC News at sunrise.
From Channel 4, this is a Gulf War News Extra.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sharon Puckett. American planes are continuing their second wave of attacks on Iraq, although they're not yet meeting any resistance. Officials are saying that the massive airstrikes by the U.S. and allied forces are taking a heavy toll on Saddam Hussein's military force. Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Colin Powell, said the goal of the air attack is to destroy Iraq's military capability. British Prime Minister John Major appeared on BBC television several hours ago and commented that Great Britain is in for the long haul to help the U.S. force Iraq out of Kuwait.
We will prosecute this war until it comes to a successful conclusion. There is no doubt at all what the world community wants. It wants Saddam Hussein to leave Kuwait and Kuwait to return to its rightful government. When that matter is concluded, the war will end. But there should be no doubt about our determination to prosecute it to that end.
Although there is no U.S. confirmation, Baghdad Radio is reporting that Iraqi anti-aircraft units shot down at least 14 Allied planes during this morning's air attack. Probably nowhere in our area is this a more agonizing time than for the tens of thousands of people around Fort Campbell, where virtually everyone has either relatives or close friends in the Middle East. Stephen Lynn is at Fort Campbell and joins us now with his live report. Stephen?
However, Sharon, you may be surprised to know that by looking at Fort Campbell this morning, you'd have no idea that America is in the middle of a war. Cars are driving on and off the post as they do every morning about this time, same volume of cars. That is not to say, however, that people around here are not worried. There are 20,000 people for Fort Campbell involved in Operation Desert Storm, that is including support units for the 101st Airborne. However, the Airborne are not involved yet. They are ground troops, they are infantrymen, they are an air assault unit, which means that while aircraft transports them into, in this case will transport them into Iraq, they will fight on the ground. They have not been deployed yet in this operation, so far there is nothing going on here. There is no information coming from here. But again, people around here are very worried. There's an all-night diner down the street where people are gathered around television sets, listening to the radio, trying to find out any new information. People are coming up to us off and on asking if we have anything new. Again, we won't have any official word from Fort Campbell anytime soon. They say they will wait until ground forces are deployed in this war, in this conflict, before they will have any information for us. Again, we do not know when that will be. We will have another update for you in a half an hour and a complete report for you at 5:30. Reporting for Fort Campbell, this is Stephen Lynn, Channel 4 News.
Thank you, Stephen. We'll continue our local coverage of events in the Persian Gulf in just a moment.
A special public service series created by WSMV for the family. Stand Up for Education.
Education opens a lot of doors, but without it, many of life's doors stay shut.
The experts say Tennessee is not making the grade in education. That carries a high price for our economy and our growth as a people and a state. The question is, when do we do something about it?
We believe the time is now, and WSMV will be a part of that cause with Stand Up for Education.
Stand Up for Education will bring you news stories, news series, programs, and daily For the Family messages on the health of our education system.
You'll meet people like yourself, concerned citizens, parents, teachers, and children, as we look for real answers to education's problems.
Stand Up for Education is our commitment to you and our report card for our children. It's WSMV's call to action.
Join us. Stand up for education in Tennessee. It's time.
The war with Iraq is already having an impact on the world oil market. In some overseas markets, the price has already gone up by some $3 a barrel. What will that mean at the gas pumps? Frankly, it's too early to tell. President Bush has ordered millions of barrels of American reserves onto the market to help ensure the supply is plentiful and hopefully to help stabilize the market. But there are also some fears that some dealers may try to take advantage of the situation for profit. Washington is warning against anyone price gouging. Still, many consider it likely that gas prices will be going up in the days ahead. Taking a look at our local weather, currently Nashville 41 degrees under cloudy skies, winds from the west 8 miles per hour. The barometer 30.14 and rising, humidity 82%. Stay tuned to Channel 4 for continuing coverage of the war in the Middle East. NBC News will continue its 24-hour coverage of the latest developments of Operation Desert Storm. And we'll bring you local updates throughout the morning. Our next update will be at 4:45. Updating the situation now in the Persian Gulf. Operation Desert Storm began last night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, 3 o'clock in the morning in the Gulf. U.S. cruise missiles and hundreds of U.S., British, Saudi, French, and Kuwaiti planes have kept up a relentless attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait. President Bush addressed the nation last night saying that Iraq's president, Saddam Hussein, had, in the president's words, met every overture of peace with contempt. This morning, more contempt from Saddam. In an address to his people, he calls on them to rise up against what he calls the treacherous fools who attacked Iraq. He also refers to President Bush as Satan and blasted Saudi King Fahd as a traitor to his people. Saddam says Iraq will triumph over what he calls the evil attackers because he says God is on his side. Vitriol that has been part of the PR war Saddam has kept up in tandem with his aggression against Kuwait. The people who are running the military war right now and who seem very much to be on top are at the Pentagon, and NBC's Bob Hager is standing by there. Good morning, Bob. What have you got?
Good morning, Mary Alice. Well, we're not hearing much new other than that from last night where they said they were very, very encouraged. Since then, we've had more or less a blackout on news. We're expecting to hear more in a few hours. However, we do know that, again, they've been very successful in the early targets that they went after. They say that, that no American planes were shot down. We'll be very anxious to hear more about that as we get into our early morning news conferences and people come in here who are prepared to report to us on that.
Is the Pentagon planning more briefings than they have in the past as a result of this?
I'm sorry, Mary Alice, what was it?
Is the Pentagon planning more briefings, frequent briefings, as they get more information from the Gulf and from the analysis of those satellite photos?
Well, they promised that last night. They said they would try to do briefings fairly frequently, but they also warned that in the early stages that might not be so, that for strategic reasons they didn't want to give too much away right now, especially I think that'll be true in the early interpretation of the satellite photos, that they don't want to give too much away until more is known, and so we won't be hearing until midday is the general line around here.
Okay, thank you very much. Bob Hager at the Pentagon, and now over to Garrick.
Mary Alice, we want to go now to Saudi Arabia, where Arthur Kent, our correspondent on the scene, is standing by at the big air base there. Arthur, the strikes are continuing, the daytime strikes against Iraq. What information do you have from there?
Well, we're getting more information, actually, on this sporadic Iraqi artillery shelling of the northern town of Khafji. We've now got it from two different sources, including my colleague Mort Rosenblum at the Associated Press now, that there has been damage sustained there, as you were saying in your interview this morning, just earlier. The Japanese oil company. Also, there are some Saudi facilities that have been hit. But it's interesting to note, Garrick, I was speaking yesterday with an official of the Saudi Aramco company, and he said off the record that some of the oil installations here, some of the refineries in particular, had their stocks and supplies drawn down, that many of the tanks and indeed some of the refining works themselves had been purged or partially purged, so that if they were hit in any kind of Iraqi preemptive strike or a retaliatory strike, such as this ragged shell fire we're seeing today, the loss would not be as extensive as if a rocket or an artillery shell were to hit a fully functioning refinery. So there was some thought in mind to this, and you can bet your bottom dollar, Garrick, that the U.S. military and the Saudi military were very closely liaising with the Saudi Aramco oil company to make sure that there was some kind of coordination and preparations for this kind of warfare.
Arthur, you indicated that because of this sporadic shelling against this oil company installation in northeast Saudi Arabia, that some American units were responding to that. Anything more on that, on helicopters or other aircraft trying to suppress that Iraqi fire?
We're still waiting for an opportunity to confirm that, to put that to some officials of the U.S. military or Saudi officials. As yet, we have not had that opportunity, and no further word has come down. But it would be a very significant event, opening as it would an element of ground warfare or near ground warfare to what has essentially been, up to now, a very massive aerial bombardment airstrike campaign in Iraq and Kuwait.
And as far as those airstrikes are concerned, they are continuing with daylight sorties, some of them leaving from that base. Have you been seeing any recent departures by aircraft headed north?
Yes, it's been pretty well a constant stream of scrambles. And judging by the number of fighter aircraft, F-15C Eagle fighters, interceptors, they are either doing an awful lot of escorting, or they are indeed meeting some kind of aerial resistance to require them to use their air-to-air capability. But as yet, no way to confirm precisely what the nature of the endeavor is today.
All right, Arthur Kent, continue to stand by there in Saudi Arabia as the airstrikes against Iraq and Iraqi positions in occupied Kuwait continue. And we will continue in just a moment.
More vitamin C than this, twice the magnesium as this, more vitamin A and beta-carotene than this much iron times 8, and 2 times the vitamin B1 as this. After putting in 30 vitamins and minerals, we didn't have room for artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives. Introducing Essential Balance from Nature Made, a complete, more natural multivitamin supplement. Why would you consider anything else?
Okay, you're trying to decide between the Jeep Cherokee and the Isuzu Trooper. Let's weigh the facts, shall we? The Isuzu Trooper comes standard with 4-wheel disc brakes and triple skid plates, more cargo space, a larger fuel tank, and more headroom. Oh, one more. The Isuzu Trooper costs about $1,000 less.
The Isuzu Trooper at just $13,699. There's no comparison.
You know, milk's great for a lot of things, but when it comes to my coffee, this is great. Coffee Mate. Makes my coffee rich, smooth, and creamy. The way I like it. So milk for some things, but Coffee Mate for my coffee. It works out beautifully.
Coffee Mate from Carnation. What you put in coffee, even when there's milk around.
Two-thirds of the world is water, but it's not all like this. The American paradise, United States Virgin Islands.
And it's time to catch up on the weather and just how it's going to look across the nation on this Thursday morning. And Joe Woody's with us once again. Joe.
Thank you, Garrick. First, a look at Saudi Arabia. We do have some upper air clouds sort of hindering the view from the satellites over Iraq, so that will cause some problems as they try to survey what damage they were able to do overnight. For the U.S., this is what I see. For the West Coast, we're going to see mostly sunny skies, strong gusty winds over parts of the Southwest. Along the East Coast, pretty fair shape, except for some lake effect snows with some strong gusty winds. And it will be wet in Texas. A cold rain with some thunderstorms and a chance of some snow in portions of West Texas. Hawaii, a chance of showers, but warm in Hawaii. Highs in Hawaii in the low 80s. In Alaska, a little colder. Fairbanks going down to about 0. Anchorage in the teens. And you see the northern plains in the 20s. The rest of the country pretty close to seasonable for this time of the year. 50s down that rain in Texas. And that's the latest. Have a safe trip. Gary?
Thank you, Joe, and bringing up to date on where we stand at the end of this half hour on NBC News at sunrise. The daylight strikes, it's daytime over in the Persian Gulf, are continuing against targets in Iraq and in Iraq-occupied Kuwait. American planes, British planes, we presume also Saudi planes are taking part in that attack. The French Air Force has now entered the war. They entered several hours ago, attacking positions in Kuwait. The French Defense Ministry says 4 French planes were struck by ground fire, but they were not downed, according to that report. They returned safely to base. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
The biggest thing I saw was one of the most fantastic fireworks demonstrations I've seen since 4th of July party years and years and years ago. This was tremendous. Baghdad was lit up like a Christmas tree.
This is a special edition of NBC News at Sunrise. America at War. Here are Garrick Utley and Mary Alice Williams.
And the story itself continues. The bombing of Iraq is continuing today. The first attack began, of course, last night around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 a.m. in Baghdad. Successive waves of planes have continued to hit targets in Iraq and Kuwait since then. The Pentagon says the attacks have been successful. A senior general says the attacks will go on for a long time. At the United Nations in New York City, the American ambassador, Thomas Pickering, has told the Security Council overnight that Iraq can end the bombing if it withdraws from Kuwait now. In Iraq, President Saddam Hussein has shown no sign of withdrawing his forces from Kuwait. There has been no official confirmation of where Saddam Hussein actually is as of now. A message on Iraqi radio from Baghdad said the great showdown has begun. Saddam called on the United States to pull its forces out of the Gulf region. And America's allies in NATO say they hope the war in the Gulf will be brief. NATO ministers met in the early morning hours in Brussels. In Britain, Prime Minister John Major said the first indications are that the Allied attack was very successful, and he says he has not heard of any British casualties so far. In Israel, officials expressed hope that the attack had preempted Iraq's ability to attack Israel. Civilians there have been told to stay at home till further notice. In this country, there have been some anti-war protests since the war began at the White House in New York and other cities around the country. Also, Iraq is calling up its reserves now that the war has started. Reservists have been ordered to report within 3 days. And a final item, a short while ago, Mikhail Gorbachev in the Soviet Union made a speech about the war, and he said that Saddam Hussein brought it upon himself. Gorbachev offered Soviet political support, moral support for the war effort in the Gulf against Iraq. Those are the highlights of where we are right now. Let's go over to Mary Alice.
The first strike clearly did not take out all of Iraq's ability to retaliate. We are getting reports of ragged retaliatory shelling from Iraq against installations in Saudi Arabia onshore and along the border. NBC's Arthur Kent is standing by in Saudi Arabia. Arthur?
Hi, good morning, Mary Alice. Well, we're hearing slightly more as the hours go on of that isolated incident, the coastal town in northern Saudi Arabia, Khafji, but it's going to be many hours more before we can get a chance to confirm just exactly what has happened up there. We've got a news team on the way. We don't even know whether the Saudi authorities are going to allow them up the road, but very interesting. Our colleague, NBC News correspondent Gary Matsumoto, has been speaking with more jet fighter pilots here who are back from the nighttime raid over Iraq and Kuwait. Lieutenant Colonel Klein of the 1st Tactical Fighter Wing was telling Gary just how surprised he and his wingmates were at the very light resistance they met. Lieutenant Colonel Klein noticed electronically some Iraqi aircraft scrambling, but they turned around and headed north instead of coming south to engage the American aircraft coming in.
Okay, thank you, Arthur Kent in Saudi Arabia. And Israel, which Saddam had said would be his first target if he were attacked, told its citizens to prepare for war, but said they believe the Iraqi missiles pointed at Israel were destroyed. They seem to be greeting the strikes as a success. NBC's Martin Fletcher is standing by in Tel Aviv. Martin, is Israel under defense emergency conditions right now?
That's right, Mary Alice. Yes, the whole country is under a state of emergency. That means the Israelis have been advised to stay at home. Only 200,000 Israelis are allowed to leave their homes. They're people involved in essential services. And it's strange because there's a feeling of surprise here in Israel. There's been such a publicity campaign to prepare people for the worst, for gas war, for conventional war, for anything. Nothing happened. So the Israelis are staying at home, watching the news very carefully. But as I say, there's a feeling of joy, restrained joy, joy in the sense that a bitter enemy, Iraq, is no longer the enemy it was, but a restrained joy because Israeli experience tells them and warns Americans that the early success is something that will be very difficult to maintain over a long period of time. So it looks good now, but Israeli analysts are warning Americans don't celebrate too soon.
Martin, can you gauge reaction in the occupied territories?
Well, that's another question, of course. There's a complete curfew in Gaza on the West Bank. The situation at the moment is quiet, although Palestinian officials we've spoken to have called this a black day for Arabs, a black day for Palestinians, and they've threatened retaliation against Americans and against American allies around the world.
All right, thank you very much, Martin Fletcher in Tel Aviv. And the special edition of Sunrise will continue.
The boss in the family will be glad to know the 91 Mazda 626LX comes standard with an AM/FM cassette stereo, power windows and locks, power remote mirrors. And right now you can save up to $820 on an LX value pack with air conditioning, moonroof, and an anti-theft alarm. Plus factory-to-dealer incentives that can save you hundreds more. You're welcome, the Mazda 626.
It just feels right.
A cup of that coffee, please.
You know, it's going to be a nice day for the parade.
You know, even the coffee tasted somehow better back then. I guess that's why those Maxwell House folks slow roast their 1892 coffee. Didn't even change the way they used to make it. Introducing Maxwell House 1892 coffee, made with old-fashioned pride, the way things used to be.
At BASF, we don't make the house, we make it warmer. We don't make the suit, we make it racier. We don't make the meal, we make it healthier. We don't make the music, we make it clearer. At BASF, we don't make a lot of the products you buy, we make a lot of the products you buy better. BASF, the spirit of innovation.
As you can see there in those numbers, what has been happening overnight and today in the Persian Gulf has been sending ripples around the world. You might even say waves in markets. And Randall Smith, the Wall Street Journal, is here to tell us how those waves are hitting the shore. Morning.
Morning, Gary.
What's happening?
The markets are strongly up in Europe and Japan. A favorable reaction to the initially successful efforts in the Mideast. They're up 4 to 6%. The Nikkei in Japan was up 1,000 points. It all keys on the price of oil. And in trading in London, oil is down $6 a barrel.
So people are pretty optimistic because Israel didn't come into the war. The oil still seems to be flowing.
Exactly. They're predicting that if the U.S. market were open right this second, it would be up 40 or 50 points. Essentially, people had expected the market to go down when the fighting started, and the focus was there going to be a war? Now the focus is, how is it going? And right now it's going well.
And of course, the administration of Washington took an extra precautionary measure when it opened up the strategic reserve to take some oil out of there just to make sure there is enough oil there.
Exactly. Now, the turnaround occurred right after the Pentagon briefing when it became apparent we did not suffer seemingly many casualties or any casualties. And if there are reports that we do suffer or if there's a counterattack, obviously the whole market will turn around on the potential threat of disruption to oil supplies.
So markets will be watching briefings coming out of the Pentagon very closely today.
Exactly.
Randy, thank you very much. Let's go over and get the latest weather for this Thursday from Joe Whitty. Joe?
Thank you, Garrick. First, a look at the weather over Saudi Arabia and Iraq. We have some partly cloudy skies there. Those clouds may hinder the satellite surveillance of the damage in Iraq. Back here in the U.S., looks like a beautiful day along the west coast. Some strong gusty winds in the southwest, though. Some light snow showers in the Rocky Mountain states for you skiers, and some lake-effect snows for those areas in western Pennsylvania and western New York. The east coast, all the way from Maine down to Florida, in pretty good shape. But some heavy rains and even some thunderstorms down in Texas, and West Texas's blue area could find themselves with some snow on the ground, a couple of inches here and there. Foggy conditions for you travelers early this morning around the St. Louis area. Temperatures about seasonable for this time of the year, in the 20s around the western Great Lakes, but 70 still in southern Florida. That's my latest. Now here's what's happening in your neighborhood. Places like Chicago going up to a high of 34 degrees, Miami 78, Dallas, Fort Worth 52, but watch out for a thunderstorm here or there. Honolulu, Hawaii, 84 degrees. Compare that to Fairbanks with a high temperature of 0 degrees today. And that's the latest. Have a safe trip. Gary?
Thanks, Joe Woody. And, of course, the forecast in Saudi Arabia and Iraq particularly is for more Desert Storm. That's the military name for the operation, which continues there. And we'll have more information on what's happening in that operation as we continue in just a moment. We'll be right back.
It's tough getting out of bed to face all the chores ahead, till that aroma comes through when the Folgers starts to brew. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Folgers is mountain-grown coffee, and the rich aroma of mountain-grown beans makes Folgers one coffee made with the morning in mind.
Now things are feeling right. You see the morning in a whole new light. There's hard work to be done, another day yet to be won. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
We bake pearls made of denture material in this blueberry pie to prove how powerfully Efferdent, America's leading denture cleanser, removes this tough stain, even in between. Efferdent, stronger than stains.
Ducks, geese, and swans are the barometers of our health. They need clean air and water just like we do. So when they start to disappear, we know we're all in danger. But Ducks Unlimited can bring them back by restoring their habitat. Join us. Protecting waterfowl protects us all.
Did you ever watch three little kids learning to count? One counts on the right hand, the other counts on the left, and the third goes straight for the toes. The thing is, all kids can learn, but they all learn in different ways, so try not to compare your kids to each other or to anyone else's kids. Just try to encourage them. Because the more you know about how your kids learn, the more you'll know how to help them.
The aggression, the threats, the failed diplomacy that led to this war got personal between two men. Saddam Hussein today called the President of the United States Satan Bush. The President, for his part, slept through the night. Jim Miklaszewski is standing by at the White House. Jim, hostilities are in full force. Does that mean that there is no room for diplomacy, or does that continue on the President's schedule?
Well, in terms of diplomacy on the part of the President, I think what we'll see today is continued calls, outreach to other world leaders, pretty much to keep them informed as to how goes the war. The President, of course, put together that unprecedented international coalition that stuck together over 5.5 months to many people's surprise, I think especially Saddam Hussein's. This morning, the President, as we look over the residence now, a few of the lights are on. We can see a light. We think it's over there. We think we see the President's study. We suspect that he's getting the first reports this morning of activity that occurred overnight, daytime over there in the desert. He can place a call to the Situation Room. We don't see National Security Advisor Brent Scowcroft yet here this morning, but the President at this point, I'm sure, is getting those updates and will be headed over to the Oval Office this morning. As far as activity here, I suspect that he'll be gathered around with his advisors monitoring the war effort and also consulting with members of Congress today.
Would it surprise you if he had a very full public schedule today?
It would. So far, they don't have anything on his public schedule. I think at this point, he's going to want to step back a little bit. It's a little too early. We've heard several people express overnight, don't get too optimistic or euphoric about how the war goes so far. So I think we'll see a little bit of, well, the president's usual prudent cautiousness this morning.
It looks as though President Gorbachev of the Soviet Union, as well as the rest of the world's leaders, are coming in behind President Bush on this one. And today, Turkey will ask its parliament to authorize the use of U.S. military bases. Is that something that the president had very much hoped for?
I'm sorry, I lost you just a second. What was the last part, Mary Alice?
Turkey will be asking its parliament to authorize the use of American military bases in Turkey?
Well, all along, the president had said that this was not the U.S. against Iraq, it was the world against Iraq, and it was very important that he gather as many of the allies together to participate not only diplomatically, but militarily.
Thank you, Jim. We'll be back.
From Channel 4, this is a Gulf War News Extra.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sharon Puckett. Officials are saying that the massive airstrikes by the U.S. and allied forces are taking a heavy toll on Saddam Hussein's military force. Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff General Colin Powell said the goal of the air attack is to destroy Iraq's military capability. British Prime Minister John Major appeared on BBC television several hours ago. He commented that Great Britain is in for the long haul to help the U.S. force Iraq out of Kuwait. Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev also made an appearance on Soviet television several hours ago. In his speech, he told Soviets that he urged President Bush to call Saddam Hussein 1 hour before the attack was launched in a final attempt at peace. Gorbachev said that Secretary of State James Baker phoned him early yesterday, warning him that an attack on Iraq was imminent. The Soviet leader says he's deeply saddened that a military clash was unavoidable, but he said that his government had done everything possible to help resolve the crisis peacefully. The second wave of Allied air attacks on Iraq is still continuing at this moment. The Pentagon is saying that the attacks are being called a success. While the fighting so far has been only in the skies, at some point, ground forces will have to be involved. And it's on the ground, on the desert sand of Saudi Arabia, where thousands and thousands of men and women from Fort Campbell are stationed. Stephen Lynn is at Fort Campbell. He's talked to people at the fort and families of soldiers overseas. He joins us now with a live report. Stephen?
Well, morning on January 17, 1991 at Fort Campbell looks a lot like morning on January 16th did before America was in war. There are no apparent added security measures at Fort Campbell. That could be due in part to what Sharon mentioned, that right now ground forces are not involved in Operation Desert Storm. It is just an air attack. And the 101st Airborne, which is based at Fort Campbell, are ground infantry units. However, that does not mean that people here are not talking about the war, are not worried about the troops. As you might suspect, there have not been peace protests in this community, but there are a lot of people very worried about the 20,000 Fort Campbell soldiers, that is including the support staff for the 101st. They are all right now deployed in the Persian Gulf, and we've talked to several people at an all-night diner down the street, people who have come up to us and others around who are all saying they are worried, but they support President Bush, what he did, and they are supporting the troops, as well as the reserves and the guards from both Tennessee and Kentucky, including, and we are told now that there is a Kentucky National Guard unit planned to deploy in just a few hours. We will try to learn more about that and have that for you at 5:30 if possible, if not later in the day, but we'll have another report for you at 5:30. Stephen Lynn, Channel 4 News, reporting live from Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Thank you, Stephen. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Family members who have relatives in the Middle East are waiting for what happens next. Last night, some of those family members came together to support each other. Ann Knowles describes yesterday as the day she dreaded and expected.
When she told me that it had started, I don't know, I was just numb. And then, I don't know what I did after that.
Knowles' husband, Major J.W. Knowles, is with the Smyrna National Guard unit in the Middle East. And that unit may be closer to action than ever before. The Guard's General Carl Wallace says some units, including the Rayok unit from Smyrna, have moved closer to the front. Wallace also believes that a Guard unit from Knoxville that refuels airplanes probably aided in the first wave of the assault on Iraq. Now for a check of our weather. Currently Nashville 41 degrees and cloudy. Winds from the west at 7, the barometer 30.14 and rising, humidity 82%. Stay tuned to Channel 4 for continuing coverage of the war in the Middle East. Our next report will be a half-hour newscast beginning at 5:30.
And recapping the situation to this moment in the Persian Gulf, Operation Desert Shield is now Operation Desert Storm. U.S. forces and their allies began air attacks on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait at about 7 o'clock last night Eastern Time, 3 in the morning in the Persian Gulf. The Iraqi capital of Baghdad was pounded by wave after wave of air assaults. The Pentagon says there are more to come unless Iraqi President Saddam Hussein withdraws from Kuwait. The Pentagon also says there are no reports suggesting that U.S. planes were lost during the raids. Baghdad radio claims that 14 attacking warplanes were shot down by their anti-aircraft units. Reaction to the first strike of Desert Storm has been quick from around the world following the outbreak of hostilities in the Gulf. And we hear some of that reaction now from Moscow. Tom Pettit reports.
After a midnight conversation with President Bush before the war began, President Gorbachev said the war was brought on by Saddam Hussein. Strong words in a national TV speech. The Soviet Union is not fighting this war, but it supports the United States position. After 12,000 died in Afghanistan and millions in World War II, war is not popular here. Use of force is not a popular idea either. Still, we must find a political solution, he said. Everyone's asked for peace, but Saddam is not listening, she said. It's right. The whole world community agreed. It's a nightmare. War is blood. The war began in the middle of the night, Moscow time, so people took great interest in the news, especially at the Embassy of Iraq, which for many years was closely aligned with the Soviet Union. Now the USSR condemns Iraq. In fact, the Soviet Union is almost totally preoccupied with internal problems here at home. Some people think Gorbachev is running out of time. From that perspective, the war in the Gulf may give Gorbachev a little bit more time to try to fix this mess. Tom Pettit, NBC News, Moscow.
A situation that President Bush has taken his eye off of during the actual first strikes of Desert Storm. Just a few moments ago, President Bush visited the White House press room in a surprise visit and asked how things were going. He said, well, they're going exactly well, and exactly as you've been reporting. The special edition of Sunrise will continue after this.
More vitamin C than this, twice the magnesium as this, more vitamin A and beta-carotene than this much iron times 8, and 2 times the vitamin B1 as this. After putting in 30 vitamins and minerals, we didn't have room for artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives. Introducing Essential Balance from Nature Made, a complete, more natural multivitamin supplement. Why would you consider anything else?
Okay, you're trying to decide between the Jeep Cherokee and the Isuzu Trooper. Let's weigh the facts, shall we? The Isuzu Trooper comes standard with 4-wheel disc brakes and triple skid plates, more cargo space, a larger fuel tank, and more headroom. Oh, one more. The Isuzu Trooper costs about $1,000 less.
The Isuzu Trooper,
At just $13,699, there's no comparison.
You know, milk's great for a lot of things, but when it comes to my coffee, this is great. Coffee Mate. It makes my coffee rich, smooth, and creamy. The way I like it. So milk for some things, but Coffee Mate for my coffee. It works out beautifully.
Coffee Mate from Carnation. What you put in coffee, even when there's milk around.
Two-thirds of the world is water, but it's not all like this. The American paradise, United States Virgin Islands.
We're back now at NBC News at Sunrise talking about the impact of the war now in the Persian Gulf on our economy at home. Bob Hormats, Vice Chairman of Goldman Sachs International, is with us. Bob, looking at the reports from Europe now, it's, the Wire report says Europe's spot market for crude oil recorded its biggest one-day drop in history Thursday morning. What's that going to mean for Americans here at home?
That's great news for American drivers. If you figure $5 a barrel decline probably means 10 to 12 cents at the gas pump, and this about $10 probably means we could get oil prices down by perhaps a quarter, maybe more, maybe less over the next several weeks, if in fact the prices hold.
Okay, that's a very big if, isn't it? We're really talking about two things. We're talking about whether the oil continues to flow, and so far it is flowing. The Iraqis have not been able to interrupt that in Saudi Arabia or in the Persian Gulf. We're also talking about the psychological perception. But is this something that would sustain these prices at this level, more moderate level, if, even if the war goes on, if the oil continues to flow?
The key point is there going to be any damage to Saudi facilities? Saudis are the biggest oil exporter in the world, as you know, and the facilities so far only to a degree have been damaged. If in fact the Scud capacity is wiped out, if in fact the Air Force of the Iraqis is wiped out, and there's no further threat to Saudi facilities, then oil prices will stay. If there are acts of terrorism, if there's fear of acts of terrorism, that could put prices up again.
Earlier in the program, we've heard from you from other sources of people speculating what the impact would that would have, what impact it would have on the recession itself, the economy. If things go well, best case scenario, how does that translate into recovery?
Well, it'll help a lot of ways. Alan Murray, a few minutes ago of the Journal, pointed out that it will help in terms of interest rates. If in fact oil prices decline and stay where they are, that will reduce upward pressure on interest rates, push them down. That means home mortgage costs will go down. It means the cost of financing your refrigerator will go down. It's a big boost for the American economy, and particularly for housing.
Okay, Bob Hormats of Goldman Sachs, time for being with us. With your expertise, let's get the expertise on the weather now from Joe Whitty. Joe?
Thank you. And first, a check of the weather over desert storm territory over Saudi Arabia and Iraq. We have a huge upper level disturbance providing some partly cloudy skies that will hamper some of the satellite surveillance and may well provide some showers in that area over the weekend. Back home, a beautiful day along the west coast, except strong gusty winds over the southwest and over the northern Rocky Mountain states. A few snowflakes here and there with some lake effect snows for western portions of Pennsylvania and New York. That could add up to a little bit here and there. But clear all the way from Maine down to Florida. A wet spot will be Texas with some locally heavy rain, strong thunderstorms, and West Texas cold enough for some of that to fall as snow. Temperature-wise, just about seasonable for this time of the year. The coldest spot in the upper 20s and low 20s around Minnesota and Lake Michigan and Superior, and the warm spot down south in Florida, southern California also in the 70s, and you have to go to Hawaii for something warmer than that, temperatures in the 80s. Way up in Alaska, temperatures will be in the teens at Anchorage, Fairbanks, touching at about 0 degrees. And if you're headed for Denver today, expect temperatures close to the low 40s in the Mile High City. And again, temperatures around the Great Plains in the 20s and 36 degrees at Kansas City today. And in Chicago, if you're headed there, expect some lake effect snows and 34 degrees for a high in Chicagoland. Atlanta's high 54 degrees. And along the East Coast, a little jump up from what we've had so far, 48 degrees, which is about 10 degrees above the seasonal temperature for this time of the year. We'll see Dallas up to 52 degrees, but watch out. Some of that moisture could flow up from the Gulf of Mexico, provide you with some strong thunderstorms later on during the course of the day. And again, way up in Billings, Montana, a real relief from the very bitter cold air they had just a couple of weeks ago. 47 degrees at Billings, Montana. And the long-range outlook looks like this. Warmer than normal temperatures for the next 4 weeks over the northern plains and the Pacific Northwest, but cooler from Texas across to Florida. And that's the latest look at the weather across the country. Mary Alice.
Thank you, Joe. 11 hours into this unprecedented military campaign, Allied air power keeps up its punishment of Iraq, striking military targets to take out Iraq's nuclear and chemical capability and flatten its defense. Saddam Hussein survived the night, swearing he'll never surrender. The multinational coalition holds this morning. Response from Europe, the Soviet Union, much of the world is squarely behind President Bush's decision to turn Desert Shield into Desert Storm. Military officials say it will continue for a long time. NBC News will keep you posted through this day through Pentagon briefings with reporters at the scene and in all the crucial places where decisions are made. This has been a special report of Sunrise, a special edition. I'm Mary Alice Williams for Garrett Utley. Bye-bye.
Good morning. Just 19 hours after the expiration of the UN deadline, George Bush announced that the liberation of Kuwait had begun and unleashed the full weight of the U.S. military might on Iraq.
As I report to you, air attacks are underway against military targets in Iraq. We are determined to knock out Saddam Hussein's nuclear bomb potential. We will also destroy his chemical weapons facilities. Much of Saddam's artillery and tanks will be destroyed. Our operations are designed to best protect the lives of all the coalition forces by targeting Saddam's vast military arsenal. Initial reports from General Schwarzkopf are that our operations are proceeding according to plan.
Though there's been no official declaration, this country's at war with Iraq. And Operation Desert Storm is in progress today, Thursday, January the 17th, 1991.
From NBC News, this is a special edition of Today, America at War. Now, here are Bright Gump.